to WION live broadcast from London. I'm Oliver Regan and these are the headlines. Heavy losses for the UK's Conservative Party in local elections as results come in. Opposition Labour Party takes control of councils it hasn't held in decades. Also wins the parliamentary by-election in Blackpool South with a huge 26% shift in the vote. Iran says it's released the 25 crew of the seized Portuguese flagship MSC Ares as a humanitarian gesture. However, it remains in control of the Israel-linked vessel itself. Israel's Marif poll shows National Unity Chair Benny Gantz is strengthening his lead over the PM Benjamin Netanyahu. Says Gantz's party would win 31 seats and Netanyahu's party would win 19 if elections were held today. Xi Jinping heads to Europe on Sunday to defend China's No Limits alliance with Russia. First to key Ukraine backer France, then to Serbia and Hungary, which have close ties to the Kremlin. Farmers can rejoice as the European Union decides to extend farm subsidies until the end of 2024. The extension follows protests from farmers seeking better pay and working conditions. Turkey's annual inflation rate accelerates to 69.8% in April as per official data. This despite interest rate hikes aimed at taming soaring consumer prices. Chelsea beat Tottenham Hotspur 2-0 in the English Premier League. The win keeps the Blues in the hunt for European qualification, but dents Spurs' hopes of a Champions League berth. Counting is underway in the UK and the first results have been declared. With Labour making early gains, Tories seem to be on the back foot. Conservatives could be heading towards their worst political performance in local polls in the last 40 years. The results will be a test for the Tory Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the Labour Party leader Keir Starmer, ahead of what is expected to be a general election later this year. As per early results, the Tories appear to be struggling and have lost control of many councils. Keir Starmer's Labour Party had gained Hartlepool and Rushmore directly from the Conservatives. Labour also made a breakthrough in Rushmore, which is the home of the British Army. For the first time, Labour said that the win signifies increased trust in the party on matters of defence. Hartlepool saw Labour gain 8 seats and the Tories lose 6, and this marks a major turnaround from 2021, when the Tory win led Starmer to consider resigning. The Tories have lost about 100 council seats so far. As of 7:10 AM local time, the Conservatives were down by 92 councillors, while Labour was up by 58. Meanwhile, the Liberal Democrats were up by 9 and the Scottish Greens were up by 13. However, Labour's stance on the war in Gaza has come to hit the party's support in Muslim communities. It held on to the party's losing control of Oldham Council in Lancashire. And the Scottish Greens made major gains in Newcastle and South Tyneside. The focus is on 107 councils. 2,500 council seats and 25 places in the London Assembly are up for grabs. 11 mayoral seats across major metro areas are also in contention, which is home to about a third of Britain's population. Labour and the Conservatives are each defending around 1,000 seats. In a further blow, political experts say the Tories are expected to lose 500. The early results are aligned with opinion polls, which expect the Labour Party to gain power for the first time since 2010. On the other hand, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is hoping for success in at least a couple of key mayoral races. Sunak's expecting Conservative mayors Andy Street and Ben Houchen to hold on to their seats in the West Midlands and Tees Valley. But with the Conservatives seemingly headed for one of their biggest defeats, there is mounting speculation over Sunak's continued leadership. However, the Tory Party chairperson Richard Holden has said that Sunak will lead the party into the general election and that there were no doubts over that. In similar elections in 2021, the Conservatives under Boris Johnson were riding high following the rollout of the coronavirus vaccine. The Conservatives also face a challenge from the Liberal Democrats, while Reform UK is trying to outflank it from the right, though the parties are contesting a smaller number of seats. It may dwindle the already shrinking hold of the Tories. Former Tory party member Lee Anderson, who's now joined the Reform UK party as its first MP, claims that ex-Tory voters are now turning to Reform Party as an alternative. In fact, Labour have swept the by-election in Blackpool South. The Conservatives, who finished second, barely managed to gain more seats than the Reform Party, which held third position. Scottish National Party veteran John Ramsay Swinney is set to become Scotland's first minister. Swinney's main contender for the top job, Kate Forbes, has confirmed that she will not challenge Swinney for the SNP leadership. Swinney has promised his main contender, Kate Forbes, a quote, significant role in his government. It's expected that Swinney will now be elected as the SNP leader unopposed. The former Deputy First Minister and SNP leader said that the party was not as cohesive as before. However, he claimed he could bring the party back together. As his campaign launched, the SNP leader said he will not be an interim leader or a caretaker and is seeking a full term if he wins the leadership battle. Kate Forbes, a former finance minister, said she would not seek nomination to become the SNP's leader and that she and Swinney shared a common purpose. While publicly announcing her withdrawal from the race, Forbes said she had frank and constructive talks with Swinney. She also welcomed his commitment to ensure internal respect for divergent debates within the party. Well, the nominations for the SNP leadership will close at noon on Monday. If more candidates emerge, a ballot of SNP members will be held from May 13th to 27th. The First Minister of Scotland currently, Humza Yousaf, announced that he will step down when a new leader is elected, which could mean as soon as Monday. The Parliament will then have 28 days to nominate a new First Minister, who will be appointed by the King. If that fails, a snap election will be launched. Humza Yousaf lost a no-confidence vote against him and his government earlier this week. This after he snapped the SNP's power-sharing ties with the Scottish Greens.
Of course, not without its challenges, it's fair to say.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I refer members to my register of interests. The mental health and well-being of
My constituency in Letham.
A report says former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson was turned away from his local polling booth on Thursday. The reason given is he'd forgotten to bring an acceptable photo ID. Well, Johnson did eventually cast his ballot in South Oxfordshire. Ironically enough, the rule requiring photo ID to vote was introduced by Johnson's own government as part of the Elections Act 2022. The change came into force for the first time in the May 2023 elections. The new rule was also put to test in Thursday's mayoral and local polls. There are 22 acceptable forms of IDs. These include passports, driving licences, older or disabled person bus passes and Oyster 60 Plus cards. The UK's Electoral Commission will collect feedback from voters, polling administrators, partner organisations and campaigners to understand their experience of the polls. Chinese President Xi Jinping is heading to Europe next week. It's his first trip to the continent in the last 5 years and he will be travelling to France, Serbia and Hungary. Essentially, Ukraine, trade and investment are expected to dominate the Chinese leader's talks during this trip to Europe. On May 6th to 7th, Xi will start the tour meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris. Macron has been stressing the idea of European strategic autonomy from the US. Last year, on a visit to Beijing, Macron raised eyebrows, saying France would not necessarily always align with the US in foreign policy. Xi's visit to Paris marks 60 years of French-Chinese diplomatic relations, which France regards as an important diplomatic moment to focus on China's broader relations with the European Union. After France, Xi Jinping will visit Hungary and Serbia. Now, both those nations are seen as China-friendly and close to the Russian President Vladimir Putin, rejecting Western criticism of his invasion of Ukraine. In Hungary, the Chinese president will meet the Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who has been in power for 14 years. Despite being an EU and NATO member, Hungary has been open to diplomatic and trade relationships with Russia and China. The rising number of Chinese electric vehicle battery factories across the country is a testimony to that friendship. Well, Xi's next stop in his European tour is Hungary's southern neighbour, Serbia, where he will hold talks with the President Alexander Vučić. The two countries have a long history of friendship. President Vučić said China President's upcoming visit will bring new hope to Serbia's development.
President Xi is a president, is a person that can, one of the very rare people in the world that can really contribute to finishing some wars and establishing a long-lasting peace.
Xi Jinping's visit comes amid European divisions over trade with Beijing and the way the continent positions itself as a pole between the United States and China. The tour will be closely watched in Washington for signs of shrinking support for its crucial foreign policy goals. Israel's military has confirmed the death of an Israeli man held hostage in Gaza. His body was held in Gaza since October the 7th, and the government did not say how it learned of his death. Well, 49-year-old Dror Or lived in the Be'eri kibbutz. It's one of the community's hardest hit in the October 7th attack. His wife Yonat was killed in the initial assault, while two of their three children, Noam and Alma, were abducted and then freed in November as part of a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Dror Or's death was announced as mediators Qatar, the United States and Egypt are waiting for Hamas's response to a new proposal for a ceasefire and hostage release. Meanwhile, Hamas said it will send a delegation to Cairo as soon as possible to keep working on ceasefire talks in response to Egypt's latest proposal. They have indicated that they're taking up the proposal in a positive way. On the other hand, families of Israeli hostages held a protest in Tel Aviv, stepping up pressure on the government to reach a deal with Hamas. The protest was held outside the Defence Ministry headquarters, where Israeli War Cabinet ministers were meeting.